Thank you very much. Great cast today. I'm here with Meteos and Sneaky, of course. Meteos, I just got to ask, this is kind of unexpected, I got to imagine. You said you weren't really playing a lot of League coming into this, so how kind of surreal is it, first of all, just coming in out of almost nowhere and actually winning both your matches?
Well, it feels pretty good. If you told me this was going to happen a week ago, I probably wouldn't believe you. But, that's kind of life. It just happens one day at a time.
And but how about, against your old team, of course, you got Sneaky here to your right. You guys have been together for years, basically.
Together.
Hey, I mean, you guys are one of the closest friendships I've seen in League of Legends. You guys are great together in that general sense. So talk to me about sort of what it meant actually coming to the stage against your old team and against your, 3-year-long former teammate.
Well, I think for me, this situation was probably easier to be in than for Cloud9 because for me, I've got nothing to lose. Everyone knows I haven't really been playing that much League. I was kind of brought in last second. So for me, it was just a fun match against my friends, just see how they're doing, see how I'm doing. And yeah,
Pretty well, turns out.
It's kind of low pressure situation for me, so worked out.
You did great. Now, Sneaky, I want to kind of hear your thoughts on it. Like, here's someone who's played with you forever. He knows exactly how you lane. He knows exactly how to gank you. What did that feel like?
It was fun. I didn't feel like too much like extra pressure because I was playing against Meteos, but I knew that if I'd overextend, I would die for sure. He would capitalize.
I came bot both games early, just for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, so then talk to me about sort of Cloud9 then kind of moving forward. Of course, Meteos, I think you're not really expected to play with P1 in 2 weeks. That's, I guess, up in the air, but the expectations, Nori comes back in, just you nodding, so I'm verifying that. So I want to talk then more about Cloud9, because that's sort of what you guys have in common, a lot of this. So Sneaky, start with you, because you're still on the roster. You're the last of the old guard C9. What's this team sort of feel like compared to all the C9s past, including the ones with Meteos?
It's pretty comparable to last summer split with the way we're like playing, because that's like the form we've been in for a while where we don't have high, and he was the main shot caller for us. So now we've kind of had to learn how to play on our own with like the 5-man shot calling thing where all of us try to talk as much as we can and contribute. This last week, it's been pretty awkward. I think we probably needed these losses to keep moving forward because our games kept getting more sloppy and sloppy. So it was really hard to play, and yeah, I think these 2 losses will kick us back into shape.
It's actually really hard to win a lot. I'm not even kidding. It's going to sound troll, but like when you're undefeated like these guys, it's so easy to just like not try as hard. You don't have that motivation of losing. So
then what do you see in this Cloud9 roster now watching from afar? You're actually officially part of Phoenix One as well. You got traded over. So, are you still following your friend's season and everything?
Yeah, I like watching them. I've been on Cloud9 pretty much my whole pro career except for like this week. So, it's still kind of home for me. I really like them.
All right, quick question for you. Last week when C9 played FlyQuest, who are you cheering for?
I was cheering for C9 to win, but I just want to see a really close match. I like almost everyone in that match. I'm pretty good friends with them, so it was a really fun match to watch.
Great, and obviously you were cheering for C9, so I don't need to ask you that question. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much for the interview. Congratulations on the win. Meteos, maybe we'll... actually, before we do go, I do want to ask you, after getting these match wins, do you want to go back to the LCS?
I am at the LCS right now.
But assuming Nori comes and starts back in, you gonna fight him for the spot? You gonna look for a team to play in? Do you want to start competing again?
I have no idea. I didn't know I'd be playing this week. I'm gonna sub and help out P1 while I can until they find someone else they want. So, All
right. Well, maybe we'll see more of you. Thank you very much, gentlemen, once again for the interview. Congratulations once again on the win. Let's toss it down to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Freak. It's great to see the 2 of those guys on screen together, even if they are in different uniforms.
Meteos.
Yeah, exactly that. Jad, I got a question for you. After watching all these games, do you ever have the urge to go back to the pro scene?
I'm in the pro scene.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
A few more 1,000 games of practice, and I think I'll be ready to go.
That's right. You can't just jump back into it like Meteos apparently can. But let's look at this 2-0 victory over our #1 team and an 0-2 week for Cloud9 to top all that off. So this series was incredibly impactful when it comes to the positioning of the teams here in week 5.
Yeah, and I think the team comp was a very interesting one because I had said previously that like, oh yeah, Zig, they're going to pick something that's a carry matchup for Ray, and then Zig will play a tank into it. I think that's what C9 assumed too because they blind the Fiora after banning out a lot of tanks, hoping to put him on not such a great one. He just goes Kled which I don't think anyone was expecting. They probably don't have much experience against, and it was a huge factor.
And I think what ended up happening down the stretch once the game got a little bit even and Phoenix 1 got a bit of a lead is Cloud9 didn't have enough disengage to deal with the Kled Olaf initiation that just ran them down. I mean, you're taking Ryze and Jhin, who were two relatively low mobility carries, into LeBlanc, Olaf, Kled, and they're just going to run them down, and that's what they did.
And I know, Mark, you were talking about when looking at this draft at a glance, you see over on Phoenix 1's side, LeBlanc is maybe the only top-tier pick in that lineup, right? Because otherwise it's Nami, Ezreal, Kled. Those are not, and Olaf, not necessarily things that people are jumping at or competing for. Over on C9, Jhin, Rengar, Ryze are your first 3 picks. S tier, S tier, S tier. How does Phoenix 1 end up running over this game? And I think a lot of it has to do with that interaction that you're talking about there.
Right. I mean, you can hypothetically come up with the best comp in the world just based off getting the strongest picks, but if the other team drafts intelligently, which I'd say P1 did a great job of doing, and not only just the way the champions match up, but how the team does. I think we know that Ray prefers split pushing, prefers this style, and you just pick a really hard engaged team comp that can keep forcing fights. And even though, you know, contracts got fed early, it wasn't enough.
And 23 minutes in, hard engaged by Phoenix 1, picks up 2 kills, gets him the Baron, while Ray not TPing into this fight.
Right, and you saw that it came in a little late here, but the Kled ult started a while ago, and C9 has a ton of wards around the Baron area, so they could have TP'd in as soon as they heard that Kled ult, but they did not do that. And then as soon as they're onto the Ryze, they blow him up instantly, and the fight is way too late to TP. And so if your coordination is just a little off against a hard engaged team comp like that, and one of your carries goes down, it's way too late. And if your waves aren't in a good spot, the split push does nothing.
Yeah, and I loved the fact that they got evil Meteos, so to speak, onto the Olaf in this game because he hadn't been practicing many of the new champions, and Olaf's a throwback pick for him.
I love the fact that there's no Kled icon on the screen. It's like, how often is
What
Kled
is this
picked?
thing?
That should prove to you how rarely Kled is picked that we can't even fit him onto our post-game breakdown. But it is important to note that that Kled ultimate, the sound for the audio cue is global. So for those of you who are not so familiar with the Kled, that is one of the reasons why we can look to Ray and say, hey,
Teleport
why
right away.
didn't you make that decision? You weren't in a position to be putting pressure on a turret.
Because even though in your mind Fiora is that great split-pushing champion as your team disengages, technically they were being dove by killable targets. So Fiora actually works in those team fights. If you just ult the ex-Cloud9 Meteos as he flies in, you kill him pretty quickly, and then you can just turn the fight around with the healing spring you get.
Right, very much so. And also on top of that, when we look at Kled plus Olaf coming in on, you know, low mobility champions in Jhin, no way to escape. You have Ryze, no great way to escape. It makes C9 very vulnerable to those quick cross-map engages in a sense. And maybe we'll see Kled become a more popular pick for that reason.
Potentially. I mean, there are a lot of split pushers kind of in the meta right now with the Shen. You see things like Singe, all these different things that want to be in the side lane a lot. So maybe you see the Kled a little bit more.
Yeah, I will say teams, even without Kled, today need to spartan up about these split pushes because we've seen a large number of these games ended because a team is trying to take a turret trade somewhere, and the game is just over, right? There's still this adjustment period from last season with the turret lasers removing. It's much easier to kill the Nexus turrets, and teams have not begun to respect it yet.
Game 1 ended because we went for this weird base race, 2v5. Or 2v4. I don't really understand where that decision came from. But yes, a lot of teams still may be struggling to figure out exactly how to play around the globals as we're moving, you know, away from only tanks in the top lane to having some of those carries. Let's talk about player of the game, Reverse Meteos here, picking it up.
Love it.
This time around, the Olaf pick of all things is what's going to put the nail in the coffin for C9.
Right, and Bizarro Meteos had a lot of good 2v2s where even before, like, you know, P1 had gotten the game back, they were losing pretty hard. And he had one in the top river that Ryu got involved in, as you know, Jensen took not the best Ryze ultimate, but overall he was a huge factor in these games and was constantly chasing down multiple targets on C9.
Yeah, and I almost want to say classic Meteos in this game because he had high damage, high kills. The solo kill onto contracts was probably relatively cathartic, just the new guy who's taking his spot. And he was up 2 kills at the time, but he got taken down.
Okay, now let's pull back out of this series and talk about Cloud9 as a team and their 0-2 week, because here we go, undefeated coming into it. You're up against TSM. All right, that's to a degree, an acceptable loss, I think. If you're looking at that, you have to get knocked in the teeth at some point. But the Phoenix 1 game of all games with you know, upside down Meteos coming in to smack you back. This is going to be a tough week for them to stomach. We even heard Sneaky talking about it. It might be just the kick they need to actually re-motivate themselves to get back to the top of the table?
I would hope that based off their previous week's performance, they were already pretty motivated. They were not like stomping people. They weren't exactly like feel-good series where it's like, oh yeah, we crushed them. We're looking great, guys. Let's go out and get some Korean barbecue, right? Like this wasn't their kinds of wins previously, and I don't think you need the loss to get to the level where you're like, we need to buckle down.
Yeah, I do have to say, though, that there was a pretty big letdown from the climactic series they had, FlyQuest versus C9, who was the best team in the LCS, to this week. And I definitely feel like both of those teams almost like patted themselves on the back. They read the Reddit thread after the game.
Yeah.
Man, these are so clearly the two best teams in the LCS. I can't wait to see these guys in the finals. And like, yeah, we're the best. But that wasn't the case, right? They 0-4 this week when you combine those two teams together.
And it makes all of a sudden the top of the ladder here has just went and crunched down, right? Because now all of a sudden C9, TSM are tied. We were saying last night, well, it's even if C9 loses, don't worry, they still got that game buffer over TSM. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. And Phoenix 1, they pull right in next to FlyQuest here.
I mean, the middle of the standings were always kind of a mess in terms of who was better than who, and I think the top of the standings saw that and they're like, hey, that looks pretty fun. Let's start losing too, so we can get some confusion in here.
Let's be a part of that
whole,
cool. With that craziness that's going on down there. Let's take a look at who walked away with the most player of the game distinctions here in Week 5. Keen had a big weekend with 3 player of the games, while Arrow, Dardoch, and Darshan take home 2 honors each. Now, if we see how that shook up our split leaderboards, Moon now shares the lead with Dardoch at 7 player of the game accolades, with Impact High and Svenskeren following close behind.
Yeah, and Impact getting subbed out for game 2. One of the leaders in terms of players of the game, clearly in a little bit of a midseason slump here.
Yeah,
it almost makes it more impressive. He's done it in less games.
He has. And I do want to say, just finally closing out, they subbed in Ray for game 2 in a high pressure situation, and he definitely didn't perform. I won't necessarily say that like this was a must-win for Cloud9 because they know they have that big cushion, but it's moments like these that are trying to prepare them for playoffs when it is a real make or break game, but still, Ray yet to have that successful debut with Cloud9.
Very much so. Well, we'll look for him to have it later in the split. With our individual praises in the books for Week 5, let's review how the teams placed at the end of the weekend. A rough week for Cloud9 allows TSM to climb to first alongside the previously undefeated team. Phoenix 1's upset puts them next to FlyQuest in 3rd. Then below our middle of the pack teams, Liquid drops to 9th alongside Team Envy. We'll be back again March 3rd to kick off Week 6. We start on Friday with Immortals taking on Team Liquid in the Battle Arena, with Phoenix 1 squaring off against CLG later that day. Big matchups, but we have 2 weeks to get there, and of course, IEM in between. But with these full 2 weeks, what exactly are we looking for teams to do in that 5th to 6th week time? Is it all about cleaning up the macro game? Because you mentioned the middle of the pack teams. Where does the separation begin to come?
I'm not exactly sure. It's nice to see P1 playing CLG. CLG has actually been trending upward in terms of record quite heavily, though their play has still been a little sloppy, so you're going to look at them to see if they can clean that up. And then Team Liquid has to figure something out, and they have a 2-week break to do so.
Yeah, and it's been a bit of a marathon, as always, when you're playing every week. So what I'd like to see these teams do in the break is go back, spend some time VOD reviewing almost all of your games you've played, and figure the styles that have worked best for you. And then specifically play for those styles, because we've seen a lot of inconsistencies in drafts. We've seen teams try to play a varying number of styles. And now you can actually take some time to analyze and really hone in what kind of team you want to run.
Experimentation on the first half of the split. Yep. Maybe time to lock down specific strategies that work in the second half. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for Week 5 from us here. Now for myself, the cast of the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching. For the diehard fans, though, stick around because NA LCS Tonight is coming up right after this, where Kobe joins myself and Jat to break down the weekend's highlights. We'll see you soon.